La búsqueda de seguridad es una ilusión. De hecho, es lo opuesto a la seguridad, porque cuando te defiendes de la vida, vives en el lado negativo de ella. Alan Watts. Alan Watts nos invita a un viaje paradójico, donde encontramos fuerza en la vulnerabilidad, donde descubrimos la paz en la incertidumbre, donde abrazamos la sabiduría de no saber. Él tiene mucho que enseñarte sobre esto, así que te sugiero que me acompañes hasta el final. Si este contenido te resulta útil, aprovecha y suscríbete al canal. Dale me gusta al video para que YouTube pueda revelar más contenido increíble. Gracias de antemano. La vida es un río que nunca deja de fluir. Puedes intentar construir presas, puedes intentar controlar tu corriente, puedes intentar predecir cada curva, cada roca, cada movimiento de las aguas. Pero el río sigue fluyendo. ¿Y tú? Permaneces al margen, observando ansiosamente, planeando obsesivamente, temiendo constantemente. Alan Watts nos susurra una antigua verdad. La seguridad que buscamos no existe, y es precisamente en este descubrimiento que encontramos nuestra verdadera libertad. Imagínese por un momento. Te pasas la vida construyendo muros a tu alrededor. Muros hechos de certezas, planes, garantías. Cada ladrillo es un intento de control. Cada capa es una promesa de protección. Pero cuando finalmente terminas tu fortaleza, cuando finalmente te sientes seguro detrás de sus muros, descubres algo inquietante. No estás protegido, estás atrapado. La vida sucede fuera de los muros. La belleza baila más allá de tus certezas. El amor florece en la vulnerabilidad que tanto temes. Y tú permaneces aislado en tu prisión de seguridad, mirando la vida a través de pequeñas ventanas, viviendo solo ecos de lo que podría ser. El niño que eras conocía esta sabiduría de forma natural. Corría sin saber dónde pisaba, saltaba sin calcular su caída, sonreía sin garantía alguna de ser correspondida. Cada día era una nueva aventura, cada momento un descubrimiento inesperado. No había mapas, no había mapas de carreteras, no había seguro de vida emocional, había simplemente presencia. Pero entonces llegó la mente adulta con sus promesas seductoras. Necesitas un plan, susurró. Se necesitan garantías, insistió. Necesitas controlar el futuro para ser feliz, mintió. Y tú, lentamente, comenzaste a cambiar tu libertad natural por una sensación artificial de control. Alan Watts observa que vivimos como si estuviéramos separados de la vida, como si fuéramos observadores externos, tratando de manipular una experiencia de la que somos parte inseparable. Es como una ola intentando controlar el océano. Es como una hoja que intenta dirigir el viento. Es como una nota musical intentando componer la sinfonía completa. Absurdo y al mismo tiempo perfectamente humano. La inseguridad que tanto tememos no es lo opuesto a la vida. Ella es la esencia misma de la vida. Piensa en las cosas más hermosas que hayas experimentado, los momentos más significativos, las experiencias más transformadoras. ¿Cuántos de ellos ocurrieron dentro de tu zona de control? ¿Cuántos fueron planeados, predichos, garantizados? El primer beso llegó sin manual de instrucciones. El nacimiento de un niño trajo más preguntas que respuestas. El momento en el que te enamoraste trastocó todos tus planes racionales. La inspiración que cambió tu vida apareció cuando menos lo esperabas. La vida real sucede en los espacios entre tus certezas, en el silencio entre pensamientos, en la pausa entre respiraciones, en el vacío fértil entre lo que sabes y lo que aún no has descubierto. Hay una parábola zen sobre un hombre que pasa toda su vida construyendo un puente sobre un río. calcula cada viga, mide cada ángulo, planifica cada detalle con precisión matemática. Durante décadas trabajó obsesivamente, convencido de que solo un puente perfecto le daría la seguridad para cruzar. Mientras tanto, miles de personas simplemente entran al agua y nadan hasta la otra orilla. Se mojan, a veces luchan contra la corriente. En ocasiones son llevados un poco lejos de su destino planeado, pero lo consiguen. Ellos viven, experimentan la textura del agua, la fuerza de la corriente, la alegría de emerger al otro lado, vivos y transformados por el viaje. El constructor de puentes permanece eternamente en la orilla inicial, perfeccionando su proyecto, posponiendo su vida. Alan Watts nos invita a reconocer que somos como este constructor obsesivo. Pasamos años preparándonos para vivir, décadas planeando nuestra felicidad, una existencia entera posponiendo nuestra presencia. Cuando consiga ese trabajo, entonces seré feliz. Cuando encuentre a la persona adecuada, entonces me sentiré seguro. Cuando tenga suficiente dinero, entonces podré relajarme. Cuando resuelva todos mis problemas, entonces comenzaré a vivir verdaderamente. Pero la vida no espera nuestro permiso para suceder. Fluye. Ahora. Pulsa. Ahora mismo. Ella invita, en este aliento. La seguridad que buscamos es como intentar retener agua en nuestras manos. Cuanto más apretamos los puños, más se nos escapa entre los dedos. Cuanto más relajamos nuestro agarre, más tiempo permanece con nosotros, fluyendo naturalmente a través de nuestros dedos, refrescando nuestra piel, calmando nuestra sed. El miedo a la inseguridad nos hace perder precisamente lo que más deseamos, la experiencia plena de estar vivos. Observa tu respiración por un momento. No controlas cuándo entrará cada molécula de oxígeno a tus pulmones. No planificas el ritmo exacto de tu corazón. No gestionas conscientemente la regeneración de tus células. Todo tu cuerpo trabaja en una danza de incertidumbre coordinada. Cada latido del corazón es un acto de fe. Cada respiración es una entrega a lo desconocido. Cada momento de la vida es una danza con lo impredecible. Y funciona perfectamente, sin tu interferencia ansiosa. La naturaleza no hace planes de contingencia. El árbol no se preocupa de si habrá suficiente lluvia el próximo año. Simplemente crece. El pájaro no guarda semillas para la próxima década. Simplemente canta. El río no duda frente a las piedras. Simplemente fluye, encontrando su camino naturalmente. Y tú, parte inseparable de esa misma naturaleza, puedes redescubrir esta sabiduría orgánica. Alan Watts nos habla de un concepto chino llamado Wu Wei, la acción sin acción, el hacer sin forzar. Es como navegar. No creas el viento, pero puedes bailar con él. No puedes controlar las olas, pero puedes aprender su lenguaje. No dominas el mar, pero puedes descubrir cómo moverte en armonía con sus fuerzas. El marinero experimentado no lucha contra la tormenta, la atraviesa, no con resistencia, sino con flexibilidad, no con rigidez, sino con adaptabilidad, no con miedo, sino con una profunda confianza en tu capacidad de responder a lo que se te presente. Esta es la sabiduría de la inseguridad. Reconocer que eres parte de un flujo más grande y que tu verdadera seguridad no proviene de controlar ese flujo, sino de aprender a bailar con él. Imagina que tu vida es una conversación. Cuando intentas controlar cada palabra que la otra persona dirá, cuando planeas obsesivamente tus respuestas antes incluso de escuchar lo que se dice, no estás teniendo una conversación, estás monologando. Te estás perdiendo la magia del intercambio real, la sorpresa de las conexiones inesperadas, la belleza de los silencios compartidos. La vida es esta conversación permanente entre tú y el misterio. Y el misterio tiene mucho que contarte. Pero es necesario dejar de hablar por un momento para poder escuchar. Necesitas dejar de planificar tus próximas palabras para que puedas recibir las que se te ofrecen ahora. Debes confiar en que tendrás la respuesta apropiada cuando la necesites, tal como siempre lo has hecho hasta ahora. Piensa en todas las crisis por las que has pasado. En el momento en que sucedieron, te sentiste completamente perdido, totalmente desprevenido, absolutamente inseguro. No sabías cómo sobrevivirías, cómo encontrarías una solución, cómo seguirías adelante. Pero tú seguiste, no porque tuvieras un plan perfecto, sino porque descubriste recursos dentro de ti que no sabías que existían. No porque controlaba todas las variables, sino porque aprendió a improvisar, a adaptarse, a crecer a través de la incertidumbre. Cada crisis fue una escuela de confianza. Cada desafío fue una oportunidad para descubrir tu verdadera naturaleza resiliente. Cada momento de inseguridad fue una invitación a acceder a una sabiduría más profunda que tus planes conscientes. Alan Watts sugiere que la ansiedad es como intentar iluminar la oscuridad con una linterna alimentada por baterías de nuestra propia energía vital. Cuanto más ansiosos nos ponemos, más oscuro parece volverse todo a nuestro alrededor. Cuanto más energía gastamos intentando controlar lo incontrolable, menos energía disponible tenemos para responder creativamente a lo que realmente está sucediendo. Es como intentar conducir un coche mirando solo el espejo retrovisor. O planificar una comida pensando solo en lo que comiste ayer. Te pierdes el momento presente, que es el único momento en el que la vida realmente sucede. El único momento en el que tienes poder real. El único momento en el que son posibles elecciones genuinas. La inseguridad, cuando se acepta sabiamente, se convierte en apertura. La incertidumbre, cuando es recibida con valentía, se revela como libertad. El no saber, cuando se acepta con humildad, se convierte en la puerta a descubrimientos imposibles de planificar. Hay una diferencia sutil, pero revolucionaria, entre vivir en inseguridad y vivir con inseguridad. Vivir ya la inseguridad es como hundirse constantemente, luchar desesperadamente contra las olas, gastar toda tu energía tratando de no hundirte. Vivir con la inseguridad es como aprender a nadar, reconocer que el agua puede ser tu aliada, descubrir que puedes flotar naturalmente si dejas de luchar contra ella. Alan Watts nos enseña que la diferencia radica en la calidad de nuestra relación con lo desconocido. Podemos relacionarnos con él como un enemigo o como un maestro. Podemos verlo como una amenaza o como una invitación. Podemos afrontarlo con resistencia o con curiosidad. Una mente que busca obsesivamente la seguridad es como un jardinero que intenta controlar cada aspecto del crecimiento de una planta. Mide el agua con precisión científica, cuenta cada nutriente, calcula cada rayo de sol, monitorea cada variable ambiental, pero las plantas más bellas a menudo crecen en las grietas de las aceras, sin cuidados especiales, sin condiciones ideales, sin garantía de supervivencia. Encuentran su camino a través del hormigón, capturan la luz disponible, transforman las dificultades en fortaleza, no porque ignoren los desafíos, sino porque responden a ellos con una inteligencia orgánica que no requiere planificación consciente. Tú posees esa misma inteligencia. Se manifiesta cuando dejas de intentar controlar y comienzas a participar, cuando dejas de resistirte y aprendes a bailar, cuando dejas ir la necesidad de saberlo todo y te permites descubrir. Observa cómo tu cuerpo cura un corte. No necesitas enviar instrucciones conscientes a tus células. No necesitas coordinar conscientemente el proceso de regeneración. No necesitas preocuparte de si tu cuerpo sabrá qué hacer. Él simplemente lo sabe. Y lo hace. Perfectamente. Esta misma sabiduría opera en todas las dimensiones de tu existencia. Emocional, mental, espiritual, relacional. Pero solo puede funcionar libremente cuando dejas de interferir con tu ansiedad controladora. Alan Watts compara nuestra búsqueda de seguridad con intentar mordernos los dientes. Es un esfuerzo condenado al fracaso, porque el instrumento que estás usando para buscar seguridad es parte del mismo sistema que necesita ser comprendido. La mente que busca el control es la misma mente que crea la sensación de estar fuera de control. El yo que busca seguridad es una construcción mental que solo existe en contraste con la inseguridad. Es como intentar ponerse de pie tirando de tus propios pies. Cuanto más fuerza apliques, más te quedarás en el mismo sitio. La verdadera seguridad surge cuando reconoces que nunca has estado realmente separado del flujo de la vida, que no eres un extraño intentando infiltrarse en la existencia, sino una expresión natural de ella, que tu respiración es el aliento del universo, tu latido es el ritmo de la existencia, tu conciencia es la forma en que el cosmos se conoce a sí mismo. En esta percepción, la búsqueda de seguridad resulta innecesaria, no porque obtengas garantías, sino porque descubres que siempre has estado en casa, no porque elimine riesgos, sino porque reconoce que el riesgo y la seguridad son dos caras de la misma moneda. No porque resuelva todos los problemas, sino porque trasciende la necesidad obsesiva de resolverlos. Sigue tomando decisiones prácticas, sigue haciendo planes sensatos, sigue gestionando tu vida responsablemente, pero ahora, desde un lugar de apertura en lugar de cierre, de confianza en lugar de miedo, de participación en lugar de control, y descubre, paradójicamente, que esta es la manera más segura de vivir. No porque garantice resultados específicos, sino porque garantiza tu capacidad de responder creativamente a cualquier resultado que aparezca. Alan Watts nos deja una última provocación. Eres un aperitivo en el banquete del cosmos. Ni el chef, ni el organizador de la fiesta, ni el que controla el menú. Simplemente una expresión única e irrepetible del gran misterio saboreándose a sí mismo. ¿Y cuál es la función de un aperitivo? Para abrir el apetito, para preparar el paladar, para ofrecer una muestra de lo que está por venir. No llevar el peso de ser toda la comida. Cuando entiendes esto, cuando realmente permites que esta verdad se instale dentro de ti, algo fundamental se relaja. La presión de tener que resolver todos los misterios de la existencia desaparece. La ansiedad de tener que controlar cada resultado se disuelve. La necesidad compulsiva de asegurar el futuro simplemente desaparece. ¿Y qué queda? Este momento, este aliento, esta conciencia que está aquí, ahora, leyendo estas palabras, experimentando este reflejo. Simple, presente, vivo. El hombre sabio no es aquel que ha eliminado toda incertidumbre de su vida. El hombre sabio es el que ha aprendido a bailar con ella, a encontrar la belleza en ella, a descubrir la libertad a través de ella, no porque se volviera indiferente a los resultados, sino porque descubrió algo más profundo que cualquier resultado específico. La capacidad de estar presente ante cualquier cosa que esté sucediendo. La capacidad de responder en lugar de simplemente reaccionar. La sabiduría de participar en lugar de intentar controlar. Esto es libertad. No la ausencia de desafíos, sino la presencia de una confianza fundamental en la vida. No es la eliminación de la incertidumbre, sino una creciente amistad con lo desconocido. No es el logro de una seguridad absoluta, sino el descubrimiento de que ya eres parte de algo absolutamente confiable, el tapiz mismo de la existencia. Tus dudas son parte de este tapiz. Tus miedos contribuyen a tu textura. Tus incertidumbres añaden movimiento y vida al dibujo. No es necesario eliminar nada. Todo se puede incluir. Cada hilo tiene su lugar en el patrón más grande. Alan Watts susurra a través del tiempo: la vida no es un problema por resolver, sino una realidad por experimentar. Y tú, ya lo estás experimentando, ahora mismo, ahora mismo. No hace falta más preparación, no hace falta más garantías, no hace falta esperar las condiciones ideales. La vida está sucediendo, a través de ti, como tú, en ti. Y eso es suficiente, más que suficiente, es perfecto. No porque no haya nada que mejorar, sino porque la mejora también es parte de la perfección. No porque todo esté resuelto, sino porque la resolución surge naturalmente cuando dejamos de forzarla. No porque eliminemos la inseguridad, sino porque descubrimos la sabiduría que se esconde en ella. Respirar. Siéntelo es. El resto se cuidará solo. Como siempre bien atendido. Como siempre me cuidaré. ¿Y tú? Finalmente podrás relajarte en la sabiduría de la inseguridad.
You know, there's something quite extraordinary about the way we construct our sense of self. From the moment we begin to develop self-awareness as children, we start telling ourselves stories about who we are. And these stories, these narratives about our identity, become so deeply embedded, so thoroughly believed, that we never think to question them. We take them as absolute truth, as unchangeable facts about our nature. But here's what I want to suggest to you today. The most fundamental stories you tell yourself about who you are, the bedrock assumptions upon which you've built your entire sense of identity, are lies. Not malicious lies, not deliberate deceptions, but profound misunderstandings about the nature of your being. And these three lies, these three fundamental illusions, keep you trapped in patterns of suffering, limitation, and endless seeking. The extraordinary thing is that everyone believes these same three lies. They're universal delusions, passed down through culture, reinforced by society, embedded in language itself. And until you see through them, until you recognize them as the fictions they are, you remain imprisoned by them, living a life that's fundamentally based on falsehood. So let me tell you about these three lies. And as I describe them, I want you to watch your own reaction. Because the ego, the false self that's built on these lies, will immediately try to defend them. It will say, no, these aren't lies, this is just how things are. This is reality. And that defensive reaction is itself evidence of how deeply these lies have been believed. The first lie, and this is the foundation upon which the other two rest, is the lie that you are separate, that you are an isolated entity, a separate self, fundamentally divided from everything else that exists. You believe you are in here, behind your eyes, inside your skin, and the world is out there, separate from you, something you observe and interact with but are fundamentally apart from. Now, on the surface, this seems obvious, doesn't it? Of course you're separate. You have your own body, your own thoughts, your own experiences. When you feel pain, others don't feel it. When you think, others don't hear your thoughts. The boundary of your skin seems to clearly mark where you end and not you begins. How could this possibly be a lie? But let me ask you something. Where exactly do you end and the rest of the universe begins? You might say at your skin, but your skin is constantly exchanging molecules with the air. You're breathing in oxygen that was produced by trees, breathing out carbon dioxide that trees will use. The atoms in your body right now were once part of stars, part of the earth, part of countless other organisms. The food you ate yesterday is literally becoming you today. The bacteria in your gut, without which you couldn't survive, are they part of you or separate from you? You see, the boundary is completely arbitrary. It's a convention, a useful fiction, but not an actual division in reality. You are not a separate thing interacting with the universe. You are what the entire universe is doing at the point called here and now. Just as a wave is not separate from the ocean, but is the ocean waving, you are not separate from existence, but are existence expressing itself in this particular form, at this particular location, in this particular moment. But we've been conditioned from the earliest age to believe in separation. We're given a name, and we start to identify with that name as if it's what we are. We're told you and me and them, and language itself reinforces the illusion of separation with every sentence. We're taught to see ourselves as separate individuals, competing with other separate individuals for resources, for success, for love, for survival. And this lie of separation is the root of almost all suffering. Because when you believe you're separate, you're constantly defending your territory, protecting your interests, trying to get what you need from a world that seems foreign to you. You experience loneliness because you believe you're genuinely isolated. You experience fear because you're vulnerable, a small separate thing in a vast universe that doesn't care about you. You experience alienation because you never quite feel at home in a world you think you're separate from. But the moment you see through this lie, everything changes. Not because you gain something new, but because you lose an old illusion. You realize you've never been separate. You've never been alone. You've never been isolated. You are the universe experiencing itself. You are existence knowing itself. The division was imaginary. The separation was a story. And without that story, what remains is a sense of profound connection, of being at home everywhere, of belonging to everything. Now, the second lie builds directly on the first. This is the lie that you are consistent, that there's a continuous, unchanging you that persists through time. You believe there's a stable self, a constant identity that was there when you were 5 years old, is here now, and will be there when you're 80. You think of yourself as a thing, a noun, an entity that endures through all the changes of life. But is this actually true? Are you the same person you were 10 years ago? Are your thoughts the same? Your beliefs? Your body? Every cell in your body has been replaced multiple times over. Your opinions have changed. Your preferences have evolved. Your memories of your past have been rewritten countless times. So where is this continuous self? What you call yourself is actually a process, not a thing. It's a verb, not a noun. You are not a being, you are being. You're not a self, you're selfing. There's a continuous flow of experience, of sensation, of thought, of feeling, but there's no solid, unchanging entity having these experiences. There's just the experiencing itself. Think about it this way. When you look at a river, you give it a name. You call it the Mississippi or the Thames or the Ganges. But is it really the same river from moment to moment? The water that's flowing past you now will be miles away in an hour. New water is constantly flowing in. The river is never the same from one moment to the next. And yet we speak of it as if it's a single, continuous thing. You are like that river. You're a flowing process of thoughts, sensations, experiences, constantly changing, never the same from moment to moment. But you've been taught to think of yourself as a thing, as a solid entity, as a consistent self. And this lie creates enormous problems, because when you believe you're a fixed self, you become attached to particular ideas about who you are. You say, I am this kind of person. I am not that kind of person. And these definitions become a prison. You can't change, can't grow, can't become something new, because that would threaten your sense of identity. You have to defend who you think you are against any evidence that contradicts it. Moreover, this lie creates the illusion that you're in control of yourself. You think there's a you, a central controller, a captain of the ship, making decisions and running the show. But if you observe carefully, you'll notice that thoughts arise on their own. Feelings happen. Decisions emerge from conditions you didn't choose. There is no separate controller. There's just the process happening. And then thought comes in afterward and claims credit for it, saying, I did that, I thought that, I decided that. When you see through this second lie, when you recognize that you're a process rather than a thing, there's an incredible freedom. You're no longer trapped by outdated ideas about who you are. You're no longer burdened by the need to defend a consistent self-image. You're free to change, to flow, to be different in different circumstances. You realize you're not playing a fixed character in the drama of life. You're the drama itself, constantly improvising, constantly new. And now we come to the third lie, and this one is perhaps the most insidious. This is the lie that you are inadequate, that there's something wrong with you, that you need to become someone or something other than what you are, to be acceptable, to be worthy, to be complete. This lie is woven into the very fabric of our civilization. From the moment you're born, you're being measured, evaluated, judged. Are you developing properly? Are you meeting the milestones? Are you good enough? Smart enough? Attractive enough? Successful enough? The message is constant and clear. As you are right now, you're not quite right. You need to improve, to achieve, to become better. The entire economy runs on this lie. Advertising works by creating a sense of lack. You're not attractive enough, but buy this product and you will be. You're not successful enough, but get this degree, this job, this house, and you will be. You're not happy enough, but consume this experience, this substance, this entertainment, and you will be. The underlying message is always the same. You are not okay as you are, but if you do this or acquire that, then you'll finally be acceptable. Religion often reinforces this lie in different clothing. You're a sinner, you're fallen, you're separate from the divine, but if you follow these rules, perform these rituals, believe these doctrines, then you might become worthy. Even much of what passes for spirituality today is based on this same lie. You're not enlightened, you're not awakened, you're not conscious enough. But if you meditate enough, practice enough, purify enough, then you might finally become what you should be. But here's the truth that nobody wants you to know. You are already complete. You are already whole. There is nothing wrong with you. There never has been. The sense of inadequacy, the feeling that something is missing, the belief that you need to become something other than what you are, this is the lie. It's a fiction that's been implanted in you by a society that needs you to feel inadequate, so you'll keep striving, keep consuming, keep chasing. Now, I can already hear the objection. You might say, but I do have problems. I do have issues I need to work on. I do need to grow and improve. How can you say there's nothing wrong with me? And this is where we have to be very careful to understand what I'm actually saying. I'm not saying you can't learn new skills. I'm not saying you shouldn't address harmful behaviors. I'm not saying growth and development don't happen. What I'm saying is that at the fundamental level of your being, at the core of what you actually are, there is no inadequacy. The sense that you're fundamentally flawed, that at your core you're not good enough, this is the lie. You are an expression of existence itself. You are what the universe is doing right here, right now. And existence doesn't make mistakes. A tree doesn't worry that it's not a good enough tree. A river doesn't feel inadequate about its flowing. A bird doesn't doubt its worth. They simply are what they are, completely, fully, without self-consciousness or self-doubt. But human beings have developed this peculiar capacity for self-reflection, and we've used it to create an idea of what we should be, and then we've compared our actual experience to this idea, and we found ourselves wanting. We've created an ideal self, a perfect version we think we should be, and then we've felt bad about not being that. But the ideal is imaginary. It's a concept. It's not real. What's real is what you actually are in this moment. And what you actually are is the universe experiencing itself in human form. You are existence knowing itself. You are life living itself. And that is already completely sufficient, completely whole, completely acceptable. Not because you've achieved something, not because you've earned it, but because that's simply what is. When you see through this third lie, when you recognize that the sense of inadequacy is just a story you've been told and have believed, something remarkable happens. You stop the endless striving to become acceptable. You stop postponing your okayness until some future achievement. You recognize that you're already it. You've always been it. You couldn't be anything else. And paradoxically, when you stop trying to improve yourself to become acceptable, when you stop operating from a fundamental sense of lack, that's when real growth becomes possible. Not growth driven by fear and inadequacy, but growth that happens naturally, organically, like a plant growing toward the sun. Not because the seed is inadequate, but because growth is what life does. Now, here's what's important to understand about these three lives. They're interconnected. They support each other. The lie of separation makes you feel isolated and vulnerable. The lie of being a fixed self makes you rigid and defensive. The lie of inadequacy makes you constantly chase after something you think you lack. Together, they create a false sense of identity, what we might call the ego, that's constantly struggling, constantly defending, constantly seeking. And this false self, this ego, built on lies, consumes enormous amounts of energy. It requires constant maintenance, constant reinforcement, constant protection. You have to defend your separateness, maintain your self-image, prove your adequacy. It's exhausting. It's like trying to dam a river. The natural flow of life is wholeness, change, and completeness. But you're constantly expending energy to maintain the illusions of separation, fixity, and lack. But you can't simply decide to stop believing these lies. The ego can't enlighten itself. The false self can't see through its own falsehood. What's required is a different kind of seeing, a shift in awareness that happens not through effort but through relaxation, not through becoming but through recognizing what already is. This is why all the great spiritual traditions, beneath their different forms and languages, point at the same thing. They're all inviting you to see through these fundamental lies. The Buddhist talks about the illusion of the separate self. The Hindu speaks of recognizing your identity with Brahman, with all that is. The Taoist describes flowing with the way things are rather than fighting against life. Jesus spoke of dying to be reborn, of losing your life to find it. They're all pointing at the same recognition. These stories you've believed about yourself, these fundamental assumptions about your nature are not true. And when these lies are seen through, when these illusions dissolve, what remains? Not nothing, not some void or blank emptiness. What remains is what was always there beneath the lies. Simple presence, pure awareness, being itself. You don't become something special. You recognize what you've always been. You don't achieve some extraordinary state. You wake up to the ordinary reality that was hidden by extraordinary delusions. Let me be very practical about this. How do these lies operate in your daily life, and how does seeing through them change your experience? Take the lie of separation. When you believe you're separate, every interaction is a transaction between isolated entities. Relationships become negotiations. You're trying to get what you need from others while protecting yourself from being hurt. There's always this subtle guardedness, this sense of being on one side of a boundary while everyone else is on the other side. But when you see through the lie of separation, relationships transform. You recognize that you're meeting yourself in different forms. The boundary between self and other becomes transparent. There's still the appearance of separateness, still different bodies and personalities, but there's an underlying recognition of unity. Compassion becomes natural because hurting another is recognized as hurting yourself. Love stops being about getting something from someone and becomes about recognizing what you share. Consider the lie of being a fixed self. When you believe you're a consistent, unchanging entity, you become rigid. You have to defend your self-image, your reputation, your identity. If someone criticizes you, it threatens who you think you are. If circumstances change, you resist because it threatens your stability. You're constantly trying to control life to protect this imaginary stable self. But when you see through this lie, there's incredible flexibility. You can be different in different situations without feeling like you're being false. You can change your mind without feeling like you're betraying yourself. You can accept criticism without it devastating you because you're not identified with a fixed self that could be damaged. You become like water, taking the shape of whatever container you're in, yet always remaining essentially water. And the lie of inadequacy, this one affects every aspect of your life. When you believe you're fundamentally lacking, you're always striving, always seeking, always trying to fill the void. You pursue achievements hoping they'll make you feel worthy. You chase experiences hoping they'll make you feel fulfilled. You seek approval from others hoping it will validate your existence. But nothing ever quite works because you're trying to fill an imaginary hole. When you see through this lie, the striving stops. Not because you become lazy or passive, but because the desperate quality drops away. You still take action, still have preferences, still pursue things, but not from a place of lack. There's a sense of already being fulfilled, and actions arise from that fullness rather than from trying to fill an emptiness. Life becomes play rather than struggle. Now I want to address something important. You might be listening to all this and thinking, okay, I understand intellectually, I can see how these might be lies, but I still experience myself as separate, as a continuous self, as inadequate. How do I stop believing these lies? And this is the crucial point. You can't stop believing them through an act of will. You can't think your way out of these lies. Intellectual understanding is not the same as seeing through the illusion. It's like someone describing to you that the earth is round when you're standing on flat ground. You might accept it intellectually, but your direct experience still shows you flatness. What's needed is a different kind of looking. Not thinking about these things, but observing directly. Not believing new ideas about yourself, but questioning the old ones. Not trying to become awakened, but investigating whether you're already awake and just haven't noticed. Start with the simplest observation. Right now, in this moment, are you actually experiencing separation, or are you experiencing a unified field of awareness in which thoughts, sensations, and perceptions appear? Don't think about it. Just look. Is there actually a separate you experiencing these things, or is there just experiencing happening? Look at this thing you call yourself. Can you actually find it? Where is it? Is it your body, but your body is constantly changing? Is it your thoughts, but thoughts come and go? Is it your memories, but memories are constantly being revised? What is this self you're so sure exists as a continuous entity? And this sense of inadequacy, where does it come from? Is it actually in your direct experience right now? Or is it a thought about yourself, a story you're telling, a comparison you're making? When you're fully absorbed in something, when you're completely present, is there any sense of inadequacy? Or does that only appear when you step back and start evaluating yourself? This investigation is not about reaching a conclusion. It's about looking so directly at your experience that the lies become obvious. It's like looking at an optical illusion. Once you see how it works, you can't unsee it. You might still see the illusion, but you're no longer fooled by it. And here's the beautiful thing. You don't have to figure all this out. You don't have to become someone who has seen through the lies. The seeing happens on its own when the conditions are right. Your job is not to achieve some state of enlightenment. Your job is to stop reinforcing the lies, to stop compulsively thinking thoughts that maintain the illusion of separation, fixity, and inadequacy. Every time you notice yourself defending your separate identity, pause. Every time you catch yourself trying to maintain a consistent self-image, pause. Every time you feel that fundamental sense of not being enough, pause. Don't try to change anything. Just notice. Just see what's actually happening. Because the lies are maintained by unconsciousness. They persist because you believe them without questioning. But the moment you bring awareness to them, the moment you actually look directly at the assumption rather than through it, something shifts. Not because you've done something, but because light has been shone on what was hidden in darkness. This is why all the great spiritual teachings emphasize presence, awareness, consciousness. Not as something to achieve, but as something to recognize. You are already aware. You are already conscious. You are already present. But you've been so focused on the content of awareness, so caught up in the story, that you've forgotten the awareness itself. And awareness is what you actually are. Not the objects of awareness, not the thoughts and feelings and sensations, but the awareness in which all of these appear. And awareness is not separate. It's not a fixed thing. It's not inadequate. These qualities belong to the objects appearing in awareness, not to awareness itself. When you rest as awareness rather than as the character in the story, the three lies are seen through naturally. There's no separation because awareness is the space in which everything appears. There's no fixed self because awareness is not a thing, but the capacity for things to appear. There's no inadequacy because awareness lacks nothing. It's already the fullness in which everything exists. I want to be very clear. I'm not asking you to believe any of this. Don't take my word for it. Don't make this into a new set of beliefs to replace the old ones. That would just be substituting one lie for another. Instead, investigate. Look at your own experience. Question the assumptions you've been operating under your entire life. The three lies everyone believes about themselves, separation, fixity, and inadequacy, are not your personal failing. They're part of the human condition. They're built into the structure of thought and language. Everyone is subject to them until they're seen through, so there's no blame, no fault. There's simply the possibility of waking up from the dream, of seeing through the story, of recognizing what you've always been beneath the layers of belief. And when that recognition happens, life doesn't stop. You don't float off into some detached state. The person continues, the body continues, the mind continues, but the identification shifts. You're no longer imprisoned by the false sense of self. You're free to be human without believing you're only human. Free to have an identity without being trapped by it. Free to engage with life without the desperate quality that comes from believing you're inadequate. This is the liberation that's available to every human being. Not some special state for special people. Simply the recognition of what's always been true, hidden beneath the...
There comes a time, you know, when life begins to feel strangely unfamiliar, even when nothing around you has actually changed. You walk through the same rooms, you meet the same people, you say the same things, and yet it all feels as though you are watching it from a few feet away. It's as if you've stepped outside the costume you were wearing, but everyone else still sees you in it. And this is one of the most curious experiences a human being can have, because it feels at once like loss and liberation. You see, the funny thing about growing up is that we think it only happens to children. But in truth, growing up never stops. The body may reach its height, but the soul, if you let it, keeps expanding far beyond the forms it once knew. And the difficulty of this, of course, is that society isn't very well designed for it. Society wants you to remain recognizable. It says, stay the person we know. Don't change too quickly, or you'll make the rest of us nervous. But life doesn't listen to that kind of advice. Life moves, you see, like water flowing through the shape of a stream. And when the stream bends, the water doesn't argue, it simply flows. When you resist that movement in yourself, when you try to stay the same while something deeper is pulling you forward, you begin to feel this strange tension, this quiet ache, as though you're betraying something invisible inside you. And perhaps you felt that. You wake up one morning, and the music that used to excite you now sounds a little hollow. The ambitions you once chased begin to feel like chores. You go to the places you once loved, and the colors seem to have drained from them. You haven't become depressed. You've simply become aware. You've outgrown the language of your old life. It's rather like returning to your childhood home after many years. The house is smaller than you remember. The furniture seems oddly placed. You recognize everything, but it no longer holds you. This is what happens when you begin to awaken, when the consciousness within you starts to stretch beyond the limits of your identity. The world that once felt enormous begins to look like a set on a stage. Now look, this isn't something to be frightened of. It's quite natural. The problem arises only when you think you should still belong to that smaller world. When you start saying to yourself, I ought to still enjoy this. I ought to still believe that. I ought to still feel that old excitement. But you can't, because you are no longer the person who could. You see, we humans have this peculiar tendency to confuse familiarity with truth. If something feels familiar, we assume it must be right. And yet, everything that's true in life at some point feels unfamiliar because it's new. When you were born, even breathing was unfamiliar. When you fell in love, it was unfamiliar. Growth always feels that way. So the real spiritual challenge is not to force yourself back into comfort, but to sit quietly in this space of not knowing, this in-between place where the old world doesn't fit but the new one hasn't yet appeared. And that can be terribly uncomfortable, because you can't explain it to anyone. You can't tell your friends, I feel like the person you think I am is dissolving. They'll look at you rather strangely, but that's all right. Most of the world doesn't understand this process because most people are trying desperately not to go through it. You know, we spend so much of our lives trying to be consistent. We tell ourselves we must have a clear identity, a direction, a goal. We create these little psychological boxes and then feel very proud of keeping within them. But life, in its infinite playfulness, keeps shaking the box, nudging it open, whispering, come out, there's more. And when you finally dare to step out, you discover that the thing you called the world was never fixed at all. It was only the portion of reality your mind could recognize at the time. The world changes as your seeing changes. That's why it feels like you've outgrown it, because the old framework of perception can no longer contain what you now sense. Let's put it another way. Imagine a fish living in a small bowl. To the fish, that bowl is the entire universe. Then one day, someone moves it into a pond. At first, the fish might panic. The boundaries it depended on are gone. The water seems endless, and the familiar edges that once defined its safety are missing. But after a while, the fish begins to explore, and it realizes the pond was there all along. It simply couldn't see beyond the glass. That is what happens when consciousness expands. The bowl breaks, and you think you've lost your world, but really, you've gained it. Now, the difficulty with this kind of growth is that it doesn't come with a manual. No one tells you how to live when the old meanings stop working. And so, for a time, you feel lost. You may even think you're going backwards, that something has gone wrong, but I assure you, it hasn't. The sense of being lost is the sign that you're moving closer to what's real. Because to find reality, you must lose your illusions first. Perhaps it would help to remember that every transformation in nature involves a kind of death. The seed must die to become a tree. The caterpillar must dissolve to become the butterfly. The night must fall before the dawn can appear. And you, too, are part of that same rhythm. The parts of you that no longer serve your growth begin to fall away, sometimes painfully, sometimes quietly, but always inevitably. Now, people often ask, how do I know if I've really outgrown something, or if I'm just restless? Well, the difference is subtle, but unmistakable. Restlessness comes from wanting something different. Growth comes from becoming something different. Restlessness wants to escape. Growth wants to understand. Restlessness says, I can't stand this anymore. Growth says, this no longer fits who I am. And you feel it not as irritation, but as a gentle certainty. You see, real growth is never an act of rejection. You don't leave the old world in anger. You leave it in peace because you understand it. You see through it. And that understanding dissolves the need to belong to it. You no longer condemn the people who still live there. You realize that once upon a time, you did too. You can even love them more deeply because you no longer need them to be anything other than what they are. And so the world you've outgrown isn't an enemy, it's a teacher you've graduated from. And the strange melancholy that follows, because there is a melancholy, is not sadness, but gratitude. Gratitude that something so familiar could have nourished you long enough to bring you here. Now, this is where many people become confused, because they think enlightenment or awakening means always being happy, always feeling above the old life. But enlightenment, you see, is simply clarity. It's not an escape from being human. It's a deep acceptance of it. You still feel everything: joy, sorrow, boredom, confusion, but you no longer resist it. You no longer mistake your passing moods for who you are. And as this realization deepens, the very world that once felt too small begins to look beautiful again. Not because it's changed, but because your seeing has. You can still walk through the same streets, talk to the same people, and yet it all feels luminous, transparent. You see the dance rather than the struggle. You see people not as obstacles, but as expressions of the same life moving through you. But you cannot reach this stage by force. You can't make yourself awaken. You can only notice when the old shell has cracked and stop pretending it hasn't. The rest happens by itself. The river flows because it must. And you too are being carried. When you let go of the effort to belong to your old story, you begin to sense the vastness that's been here all along. It's as if a fog lifts and you realize that the world is not outside you, it is within you, reflected through your perception. That's why outgrowing the world feels so disorienting, because it's really your perception that's shifting, not the world itself. So perhaps you might stop asking, what's wrong with everything? And start asking, what is awakening in me? For when that question arises, something wonderful begins to happen. The confusion turns into curiosity. The loneliness turns into space. The silence, which once felt empty, becomes peaceful. And slowly, you begin to notice that there's a quiet intelligence at work beneath it all. That life itself knows how to unfold without your constant control. The tree doesn't struggle to grow. It simply grows. The ocean doesn't try to move. It moves. The stars don't plan their shining. They shine. And you, my friend, are no different. So don't be afraid of outgrowing the world around you. Don't try to shrink back into old patterns just to keep others comfortable, for that would be like a bird breaking its own wings to fit back into the nest. Let the winds of change lift you. Let the seasons of your being turn, because one day, when you look back, you'll see that the world you thought you left behind was not abandoned at all. It was transformed by your seeing. The world expands to the size of the soul that perceives it. And that is the beginning of true freedom. Now you see, once you've begun to sense that you've outgrown the world around you, something very strange happens. You begin to notice that you can't go back, not because anyone has locked the door, but because the person who would have fit there no longer exists. And this can be terribly unnerving at first, because most of us are brought up to believe that progress means more comfort, more belonging, more certainty. But the genuine progress of consciousness, the real awakening, moves in the opposite direction. It leads you into uncertainty, into the open, into a place where belonging has nothing to do with fitting in. When you awaken, you realize that belonging is not something you get from the world. It's something you remember within yourself. It's the recognition that you were never separate to begin with. The world was not something happening to you. It was something happening as you. But that's a difficult truth to digest, because we've spent our entire lives thinking of ourselves as little fragments, little egos floating around inside our skins, separate from everything else. And so when that boundary starts to dissolve, we panic. We say, if I'm not this person, if I'm not this role, who am I? But that question, you see, is precisely the doorway, because the truth can only enter when the old answers fail. The mind wants a definition, but life is not a definition. It's a process, a dance, an ongoing miracle of transformation. Now look, you can't pin that down. The moment you try to define yourself, you've already limited the mystery that you are. It's like trying to catch the wind in your hands. You can't do it. You can only feel it move through you, and that movement is you. This is why, when people begin to awaken, they often feel like they've lost themselves. They haven't. They've only lost the fiction of themselves. the story that was never truly theirs to begin with, the identity built from ideas, expectations, and fears. And once that illusion starts to crumble, what remains is something astonishingly simple: awareness itself. You see, awareness has no shape, no boundaries, no history. It is the space in which everything appears and disappears. Thoughts, feelings, people, places, they come and go. But the awareness in which they arise is untouched. It doesn't age. It doesn't change. It is the same awareness you had as a child, though its content has shifted countless times. So what's really happening when you outgrow the world is not that you're becoming better or more spiritual. Those are just words. What's really happening is that you're remembering that you were never the world to begin with. You were always the consciousness through which the world appeared. And that realization changes everything. It doesn't make you superior, it makes you humble. Because you see that every person, every bird, every leaf on every tree is an expression of the same consciousness, the same awareness looking through different eyes, the same life breathing through different forms. At that point, you no longer feel the need to prove anything. You stop arguing with reality. You stop trying to make life fit your idea of how it should be, because you realize it already is. The great cosmic joke is that all your efforts to control life were happening inside the very flow that was carrying you perfectly where you needed to go. It's like trying to row upstream in a river that's already taking you home. The moment you stop struggling, you discover that you've been moving effortlessly all along. Now, of course, the mind doesn't like this. The mind says, well, if I stop striving, won't I become lazy? Won't I lose my edge? But that's the trick of the ego, you see. The ego equates surrender with defeat. But surrender is not giving up, it's waking up. It's the recognition that you were never separate from the movement to begin with. Think of breathing. You don't have to remind yourself to do it. You can, if you want, take control for a while, but eventually the body breathes by itself. Life lives itself through you in the same way. The more you trust it, the more effortlessly it flows. And perhaps this is what growing beyond the world truly means. It doesn't mean renouncing the world. It doesn't mean escaping from it. It means seeing it as play, as rhythm, as a kind of divine game. When you see that, the heaviness drops away. You stop trying to make sense of everything, because you realize that sense itself is part of the dance. The philosopher's mistake has always been to think that life is a problem to be solved. But life isn't a problem, it's a mystery to be experienced. When you outgrow the world, you stop treating it like a puzzle and start moving with it like a melody. You see, the world around you is always changing, always dying and being reborn in every instant. The past you remember no longer exists. The future you imagine will never arrive the way you think. There is only this living moment, endlessly renewing itself. And you, if you're awake, are not separate from that renewal. You are it. And that, perhaps, is what people fear most, that they are not observers of life, but participants in it. Because to truly participate means to let go of control. It means to trust the unknown. It means to love without conditions, to laugh without reason, to cry without shame. But the more deeply you surrender, the more natural it becomes. You start to notice that the very energy that moves the stars is the same energy that moves your breath, that the silence between your thoughts is the same silence between the waves of the ocean. You realize that what you've been calling you and what you've been calling the world were never two different things. And suddenly, the question, have I outgrown the world, disappears, because there's no longer a you and a world to compare. There's only the dance. When this becomes clear, life begins to feel effortless again, but in a new way. Not the careless ease of ignorance, but the deep ease of understanding. You can walk through chaos and remain still inside. You can lose everything and feel as though nothing essential has been lost, because you finally see that what you are cannot be taken away. It's like realizing you are the screen on which the movie of life is projected. The scenes change, the characters appear and disappear, but the screen remains untouched. Once you know yourself as the screen, you can enjoy the movie fully, even the tragedies, because you know they're not ultimate. You can laugh and cry at once. That's freedom. Not the freedom of getting what you want, but the freedom of no longer needing to. The freedom of realizing that you already are what you were seeking. So, when you find yourself feeling distant from the world, don't rush to fix it. Sit quietly in that distance. Feel it, because that distance is not separation, it's space. The space in which awareness recognizes itself. And in that stillness, you begin to sense something extraordinary, that all your growing, all your seeking, all your outgrowing were never really about reaching somewhere else. They were about remembering what you've always been. You can almost hear it in the silence, a kind of laughter beneath the surface of things. The laughter of the universe, realizing it's been playing hide and seek with itself. You pretending to be you. Me pretending to be me. And then suddenly, the game is up. We remember. And when you remember, you don't need to outgrow anything anymore, because you see that growth and decay, birth and death, coming and going, are all movements of the same ocean. You stop identifying with the wave and realize you are the water. This realization doesn't make the world vanish. On the contrary, it makes it shine. You can look at an ordinary leaf and it will bring tears to your eyes because you see eternity in it. You can sit in traffic and smile because even there you sense the divine pulse. Nothing is ordinary anymore. Everything is alive. And this, I suppose, is what it truly means to awaken, to return to the simplicity that was always here. You discover that the world you thought you had outgrown was never outside you. It was a reflection of your own awakening consciousness. The moment you stop fighting it, it transforms before your eyes. So, don't be discouraged if you feel you've drifted away from what used to be familiar. You're not lost, you're being remade. You're not breaking down, you're breaking open. And one day, perhaps when you least expect it, you'll look around and see that everything fits again. Not because it's gone back to how it was, but because you've expanded enough to hold it all. That's when you'll know you've come home. Not to a place, but to a seeing, a stillness that was here all along, quietly waiting for you to stop searching. And from that stillness, you'll realize something beautiful. You never really outgrew the world. You simply grew into the realization that you are it.
You know, there's something rather strange that's been happening to you lately. The things that used to light you up don't anymore. That song you played on repeat until your ears bled, now it's just noise. The food you craved tastes like cardboard in your mouth. Even the people you love, the ones whose laughter used to fill your chest with warmth, they feel distant, muted, like you're watching them through glass. And here's what terrifies you most. You're starting to wonder if you've lost the ability to feel anything at all. If something inside you has died and you didn't even notice it dying, but I want to suggest something quite different to you today. What if this numbness isn't death at all? What if it's the most dangerous phase of waking up you'll ever experience? Let me describe it more precisely, because I suspect you know exactly what I'm talking about. You wake up in the morning and there's nothing. No dread. Exactly. No excitement either. Just a kind of gray neutrality that follows you like a shadow. You scroll through your phone looking for something, anything that might spark that old feeling. A video, a message, a piece of news that matters. Nothing lands. You try your old escapes. Maybe you binge a series you used to love. Maybe you buy something you don't need. Maybe you reach for a drink, a substance, a person. And here's the truly terrifying part. Even when you get what you wanted, even when the thing arrives or the experience happens, there's no payload, no rush. no satisfaction. It's like biting into fruit and tasting only texture. The sweetness is gone, and you start to panic, don't you? You start running through possibilities in your mind. Am I depressed? Is this a chemical imbalance? Did I burn myself out? Am I broken? You might even go to a doctor. Get tested. Try medications. Read articles about dopamine and serotonin, about hedonic adaptation and anhedonia, and maybe some of that helps, or maybe it doesn't. Because what if I told you that what you're experiencing isn't a malfunction at all? What if this loss, this death of the old joy, is actually a birth in disguise? To understand what I mean, we need to look at what we've been calling joy all these years. Because I don't think you've lost joy. I think you've lost something else entirely. Think back to the last time you felt genuinely happy. Really happy. What was happening? Chances are you weren't just experiencing something pleasant. You were experiencing relief. Relief from hunger when you ate that perfect meal. Relief from loneliness when someone finally texted you back. Relief from boredom when you found that perfect show. Relief from anxiety when the weekend finally arrived. You see, most of what we call pleasure is actually just the cessation of discomfort. It's like this. Imagine you're hitting yourself with a hammer, over and over, and then you stop. The moment you stop feels amazing, doesn't it? Your whole body floods with relief. But that's not happiness. That's just not being hit anymore. This is what the Buddha was pointing at when he said life is dukkha, unsatisfactoriness. Not that life is suffering exactly, but that it's fundamentally unstable, based on lack. We spend our entire lives in this bizarre cycle. Create a problem, solve the problem, feel good for a moment, create another problem. Make yourself hungry so eating feels good. Make yourself lonely so connection feels good. Make yourself bored so entertainment feels good. We've become like addicts who need the withdrawal just to feel the high of the fix. And for most of your life, this worked. This game of scratching itches you created yourself, it was enough. It felt like living, but then something shifted. Maybe it happened slowly. Maybe it happened all at once. But at some point, your consciousness saw through the trick. It's like when you learn how a magic trick works. Once you see the wires, the mirrors, the sleight of hand, you can't unsee them. The magic is broken forever. You can't go back to being fooled. And this is what's happened to you. You've become immune to your own manipulation. The itch you create no longer feels real enough to make the scratch satisfying. The hunger you manufacture doesn't make the food taste better. The loneliness you cultivate doesn't make connection feel profound. You've seen through it. And once you've seen through it, the whole game collapses. This is why nothing brings you joy anymore. Not because you're broken, but because you've outgrown a fundamentally childish way of experiencing life. And right now, you're in withdrawal. Not from drugs or alcohol, but from something far more addictive. You're in withdrawal from experience itself, from the constant stimulation, the peaks and valleys, the drama of your own creation. You're a thrill addict who's been cut off from the supply. And like any addict in withdrawal, you feel like you're dying. You feel hollow, empty, like a ghost walking through a world that's lost its color. You look at people around you who still seem to be enjoying things, and you feel envious, confused. Why can they still feel and I can't? But they're not more alive than you. They're just still asleep, still willing to believe in the game, still able to get high on their own manufactured crises and resolutions. You can't anymore. I knew a woman once, let's call her Maya, who went through this exact thing. She was a musician. Her whole identity was built around the rush of performing, the high of applause, the intoxication of creating something beautiful. And then one day, she sat down at her piano and nothing. No inspiration, no joy, no connection to the instrument that had been her voice for 20 years. She thought she was finished, thought her gift had been taken away. What she didn't realize was that her gift wasn't music. Her gift was the silence underneath the music. And she was finally becoming quiet enough to hear it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because before you can hear the silence, You have to survive the absence of noise. And I know this feels like death. I know it feels like something precious has been taken from you. But stay with me here, because this is where it gets interesting. Imagine you've spent your entire life in a dimly lit room, a room lit only by candles. And you've been fascinated by the shadows these candles cast on the walls, the dancing shapes, the flickering movements. You've spent years watching these shadows, finding meaning in them, being entertained by them, occasionally frightened by them. They've been your whole world. And then one day, someone opens a window, and sunlight, real sunlight, floods into the room. What happens to the shadows? They vanish. Not because the light went out, but because the light became too bright. The candles are still burning, but you can't see their shadows anymore. They're overwhelmed by something infinitely more luminous. And here's the thing. For the first few moments after that window opens, you might actually think you've gone blind. Because your eyes, so accustomed to the dimness, to the subtle variations of shadow, can't yet process this much light. It's too much, too bright, too intense. So it looks like nothing, like emptiness, like a blank, washed out void. This is where you are right now. The window has opened, the light has come in, and your perception, still calibrated for shadows and candlelight, can't yet see what's here. So it feels like nothing, like absence, like loss. But it's not absence. It's presence so complete, so full, that your current way of seeing can't comprehend it yet. You're not depressed. You're not broken. You're being recalibrated. And the worst thing you can do right now, the absolute worst thing, is try to go back. Try to close the window. Try to relight the candles. Try to manufacture shadows again. I've watched people do this. When the old pleasures stop working, they panic and they try to force it. They seek more extreme experiences, louder music, stronger substances, more dangerous thrills. They jump from relationship to relationship, hobby to hobby, belief system to belief system, desperately trying to feel something, anything. And all this does is delay the inevitable. Because you can't go back to sleep once you've woken up. You can pretend. You can exhaust yourself trying. But the innocence is gone. So what do you do instead? Here's what nobody tells you. You stop trying. You stop trying to feel joy. You stop trying to get back what you've lost. You stop trying to fix yourself. Because there's nothing to fix. You're like a caterpillar that's dissolved into liquid inside a cocoon, wondering why it can't walk anymore, why it can't eat leaves, why everything that used to define it is gone. You're not a caterpillar anymore, but you're not yet a butterfly. You're just soup, formless, undefined, in between. And this is unbearable for the mind, isn't it? Because the mind wants to know what it is, wants to have an identity, wants to be something. But you're not something right now. You're nothing becoming everything. You have to give up, you see. Not give up on life. Give up on trying. You have to stop trying to feel joy the way you stopped trying to catch smoke. Stop trying to get back to how things were. You understand? There is no back. There's only this formless moment, this soup you've become. And the more you thrash around trying to be something recognizable, the longer you stay liquid. And if you can just be with this, if you can stop fighting it, stop trying to resurrect the corpse of your old way of being, something new emerges. Not the old joy, something quieter, subtler, harder to describe. The old joy was like fireworks, loud, bright, impressive, but brief. This new thing, it's more like the sky itself. It's not an experience. It's the space in which experience happens. It's not a feeling. It's the awareness that feels. Do you see the difference? The old happiness required contrast, required things to be good or bad, pleasurable or painful, exciting or boring. It needed the hammer so it could feel the relief of stopping. But this doesn't need anything. It's already here, already complete. Whether you're eating a gourmet meal or stale bread, it's here. Whether you're in love or alone, it's here. Whether you're succeeding or failing, it's here. I once knew a man who spent his whole life chasing experiences. He traveled to every country, tried every drug, had every kind of relationship. And then, one day, he just stopped. He sat in his garden, doing nothing, for hours at a time. His friends thought he'd given up, thought he was depressed. But when I asked him about it, he said something I've never forgotten. He said, I finally realized I was traveling around the world looking for my house, and then I noticed I was already standing in it. This is what happens on the other side of the emptiness. You stop looking for life and realize you are life. You stop searching for joy and discover you are the space in which joy and sorrow both arise and dissolve. You don't need things to be a certain way anymore. Not because you've given up or become numb, but because you've found something that doesn't depend on circumstances. A kind of okayness. Not happiness, exactly. Not bliss. Just okayness. Everything is fundamentally okay, even when it's not okay. Does that make sense? Probably not. Not yet. Because this isn't something you can understand intellectually. It's something you become. And you can't force it. You can't achieve it through effort. In fact, the more you try to get there, the further away you get. It's like trying to fall asleep. The harder you try, the more awake you become. Just be here. In the grayness, in the flatness, in the void. Without trying to escape it, without trying to fix it, without trying to understand it. Just sit in it like you'd sit in a waiting room. Not enjoying it, not suffering through it. Just waiting. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to get somewhere else, the moment you stop resisting what is, you arrive not at some special state, not at some peak experience. You arrive at reality itself, unfiltered, unmediated, unadorned. And it's enough. It's more than enough. It's everything. See, you haven't lost joy. You've just become too big for the small pleasures that used to contain you. Like a child who grows too tall for their favorite hiding spot. The spot didn't disappear. You just don't fit in it anymore. And yes, that's sad in a way. There's a real grief in this. Grief for the simplicity of the old way, for the innocence that's been lost. But would you really want to go back? Would you really want to shrink yourself down just to fit into that small space again? Or would you rather grow into the vastness that's opening up before you? The choice is yours, of course. You can keep trying to light candles in the sunlight. You can keep manufacturing problems so you can feel the relief of solving them. You can keep chasing the ghost of a happiness that was never really happiness at all. Or you can sit here in this uncomfortable in-between and wait. Wait for your eyes to adjust to the light. Wait for a new way of seeing to emerge. Wait for the butterfly you are becoming to finish forming its wings. It won't look like you thought it would. It won't feel like you expected it to. But it will be real. More real than anything you've experienced before. And here's the final thing nobody tells you. The emptiness you're feeling right now, it's not empty. It never was. You've been calling it numbness, calling it depression, calling it death. But it's none of those things. It's just space. Space that was always there, hidden beneath the noise. Space that was always holding everything. The joy, the sorrow, the hunger, the satisfaction. You are that space. Not the things moving through it. Not the feelings coming and going. The space itself. And space doesn't need anything to be complete. It doesn't need to be filled. It doesn't need to be fixed. It just is. So when you ask, why doesn't anything bring me joy anymore?
There are times in life when you feel as though you have wandered off the map. You look around and nothing seems familiar. The signposts that once guided you are gone. The landmarks that once gave you confidence have vanished, and suddenly you are overcome with a strange disorientation. You may call it confusion, uncertainty, or despair, but beneath all those names is a single experience. You feel lost. To be lost is not simply to lack direction. It is to have once believed you knew where you were going, only to realize that the path has dissolved beneath your feet. And in that moment, everything you trusted begins to tremble. The career you thought would define you feels empty. The relationship you believed would complete you unravels. The ideals you clung to no longer hold weight. You stand in the middle of life's forest and see only trees, stretching endlessly with no clear way forward. At first, this can feel like failure. After all, we are taught from childhood that life is a journey with a clear destination, and that our task is to find the straightest route to that destination. Parents, teachers, leaders, and advertisements all hand us maps. They tell us, study hard, get the right job, marry the right person, accumulate wealth, and you will arrive safely at happiness. But sooner or later, many of us discover that these maps are faulty. They do not match the terrain. We follow them diligently, only to find ourselves in places we never wanted to be. And when the map fails us, we feel lost. Yet perhaps this sense of being lost is not the catastrophe it appears to be. Perhaps it is, in fact, a gift. For the truth is, the map was never the territory. It was only a picture, a sketch, a simplified story. The territory itself is always more vast, more wild, more unpredictable than any map can show. And when the map is torn away, frightening though it may be, we are at last forced to look at the territory with our own eyes. We discover reality directly, without the filter of borrowed instructions. Consider how a traveler might cling desperately to a guidebook, reading every detail and trying to match it to the streets of a city. But one day, the book is lost, and the traveler is forced to wander. At first, there is panic, but then, slowly, the city comes alive. Sights and sounds emerge that the book never mentioned. Hidden alleyways, unexpected encounters, uncharted beauty. What once seemed like disorientation becomes discovery. Being lost is the doorway to truly seeing, and so it may be with your own life. The disorientation you feel is not proof that you have failed, but proof that you are finally meeting reality as it is. You are no longer shielded by the maps of others, no longer protected by the certainty of borrowed truths. You are naked before the mystery, and though it is terrifying, it is also alive. To be lost is to be free of false guidance, free to wander, free to see freshly. Yet notice how hard it is to accept this. The mind clings to certainty like a child clings to a blanket. We would rather have a false map than no map at all. We would rather pretend we know than admit we do not. And so the moment of lostness feels unbearable. But look closer. The discomfort arises not from being lost itself, but from resisting it. The trees are only frightening because you demand a clear path. The silence is only heavy because you insist on constant noise. If you let yourself rest in the lostness, something begins to shift. Have you ever noticed how silence deepens when you stop straining to fill it? At first it is uncomfortable, but then it becomes rich, almost musical. In the same way, lostness becomes meaningful when you stop insisting on certainty. It becomes a vast openness, a space in which anything is possible. What felt like a dead end reveals itself as the edge of a larger horizon. You are not trapped, you are unmoored, and that is a very different thing. Think of a river. We often imagine it as having a single destination, flowing inevitably toward the sea, but along the way it meanders, branches, doubles back, floods and dries. If you stand on its banks at any given moment, you might say, "This river is lost. It is wandering aimlessly." But from the larger view, it is simply the river being itself, finding its way through the land as it must. To be lost is only to be seen from too narrow a perspective. From the broader perspective, nothing is lost at all. So when you feel lost, what is really happening? You are awakening to the fact that life is not a straight road, with a fixed destination, you are realizing that all the maps were temporary, that they could never contain the mystery of existence. And while this realization unsettles the mind, it liberates the heart, for then you no longer have to pretend. You no longer have to force yourself into paths that do not fit. You can allow yourself to wander, to question, to begin again. Lostness, then, is not the enemy of life. It is life breaking through the illusions you once clung to. It is reality reminding you that the point was never to arrive, but to move, to explore, to live. To be lost is to stand at the threshold of discovery, trembling perhaps, but also alive with possibility. And notice how, in those moments of disorientation, the smallest details become radiant. When the big picture collapses, the present moment comes to the foreground. You feel the air on your skin. You hear the rustle of leaves. You notice the rise and fall of your breath. The mind, stripped of its maps, returns to immediacy. And in that immediacy, you find a strange peace. For the present moment has no need for maps. It is complete in itself. In truth, you cannot be lost in the present. Lostness always refers to the future or the past. You say, I do not know where I am going, or I should not be where I am. But here, now, you are simply here. The ground supports you. The breath moves in and out. Life continues. To drop into the present is to see that lostness is only a thought, not a reality. And when that thought softens, what remains is not despair but wonder. So perhaps, rather than resisting lostness, you might welcome it. You might see it as an initiation, a necessary stage in awakening. For who has ever truly found themselves without first being lost? Who has ever discovered truth without first seeing the failure of illusion? The very word discover means to uncover, to remove what once covered over reality. Lostness removes the cover, and though the exposure is raw, it is also true. In the end, the feeling of being lost may be the most honest feeling of all, for it admits what is always the case, that we do not ultimately know where life is taking us. The certainty we cling to is a fragile construction. Lostness tears it away and reveals the vastness beyond. And in that vastness, you may find not the path you expected, but the path you needed. When the path disappears beneath your feet, when the signs no longer point the way, and when the horizon stretches endlessly in every direction, something remarkable begins to happen. You start to discover that being lost is not an obstacle to life, but part of its essence. For what does it mean to be found, if not to have first been lost? And what does it mean to have direction, if not to have wandered without one? To feel lost is to be placed at the heart of mystery, where life can no longer be reduced to neat explanations. The truth is, you were never truly in control of the journey. You imagined that you were choosing each step, plotting each destination, and charting each course. But look closely. Did you decide to be born? Did you choose your first breath, your first thought, your first desire? Life has been carrying you all along, flowing like a river that bends and turns without asking permission. To feel lost is simply to realize this, that the river does not always follow your map, but it always flows, always moves, always carries. And so, the moment of lostness is also the moment of truth. It is the place where the illusion of control begins to crack, where you see that you are not the little navigator steering through a dangerous sea, but the very sea itself, with all its waves and currents. The loss of certainty is the birth of freedom, for now you no longer need to force life to conform to your plans. You can begin to move with it, to surrender to its rhythm, to trust that it knows more than you ever could. This is what the ancient sages called Wu Wei, effortless action, flowing with the grain of things instead of against it. Imagine a dancer moving to music. The dancer does not plan each step in advance, nor does she fight the rhythm. She listens, responds, allows the body to be moved by the sound. In the same way, life invites you to dance with it. Lostness is the silence before the music begins, the pause that invites you to listen more deeply. And when you do, you may find yourself moving with a grace you did not know was possible. Think of how a bird flies. It does not calculate each gust of wind, each eddy of air. It spreads its wings and trusts the sky to hold it. Or think of how a wave rises on the ocean. It does not know where it will crest, nor when it will fall, yet it belongs perfectly to the movement of the whole. To feel lost is to realize that you, too, are like the bird and the wave carried by something larger, included in a pattern beyond comprehension. You do not need to know the way, because the way is already unfolding through you. And here is the paradox. It is often when you stop searching desperately for direction that direction appears. Have you noticed how solutions come most easily when you stop trying to force them? How clarity arises not in the frenzy of thought, but in the quiet of letting go. To be lost is to be emptied of old certainties, and in that emptiness, new possibilities emerge. The openness of lostness is the very ground in which discovery grows. But what is it that we discover in lostness? First, we discover that the self we thought we were, the one who must always know, always plan, always control, is not as solid as it seemed. You believed you were the driver behind the eyes, the thinker of thoughts, the chooser of actions, but in lostness, that image crumbles. You see that thoughts arise on their own, feelings come and go, choices present themselves like waves breaking on the shore. The you who was supposed to be in charge is nowhere to be found, and though this may seem frightening, it is also liberating. For if the little self is not in control, then the burden is lifted. Life can flow as it will, and you can rest. Second, we discover that lostness is not separation but intimacy. When the map is gone, you are no longer looking at life from above as though it were an object to be controlled. You are inside it, immersed, woven into every detail. The rustle of leaves, the sound of rain, the rhythm of breath, all of it surrounds you, includes you, moves with you. Lostness dissolves the distance between you and the world. You realize you were never a separate traveler moving through a foreign land. You are the land itself, the path itself, the very movement of the journey. And third, we discover that lostness is not permanent. It is a season, like winter, cold, perhaps harsh, but also necessary. For in winter the ground rests, the trees shed their leaves, and what seems like death is preparation for spring. To be lost is to enter a season of dormancy, of waiting, of gestation. It is not the end, but the pause before renewal. And when spring comes, when new paths open, you may see that the lostness was not wasted. It was the soil from which new life grew. So rather than resisting lostness, we might honor it. We might see it as part of the great rhythm of existence, the ebb and flow of knowing and not knowing, of clarity and confusion, of direction and wandering. Just as day and night belong together, just as tide and trough are inseparable, so too do foundness and lostness belong to one another. Without lostness, foundness would have no meaning. Without confusion, clarity would not shine. This is why many traditions speak of the dark night of the soul, a period of disorientation and emptiness that precedes awakening. It is not punishment, but preparation. It is the breaking open of the old, so that the new can enter. And so when you feel lost, you may trust that something is ripening beneath the surface, something that will emerge in its own time. You do not need to force it, any more than you can force a seed to sprout before it is ready. You need only wait, trust, and allow. And in that waiting, you may find a peace you did not expect. For when you no longer demand that life provide answers, you are free to rest in the questions themselves. To live without knowing is not a failure. It is a kind of faith, a willingness to let life unfold without clinging. And in that faith, you may find that you are never truly lost at all. You are always here, always part of the unfolding, always held in the great embrace of existence. Look around you now. Notice the space in which these words appear. Notice the sensations in your body, the rhythm of your breath, the subtle sounds in the room. In this immediacy, there is no lostness. There is only presence. The feeling of being lost arises only when the mind insists on a map, on a certainty about the future. But here, now, there is nothing missing. The ground holds you. The breath moves. Awareness shines. In this presence, the idea of being lost dissolves, and what remains is wholeness. And so, when you feel lost, remember this: it is not a mistake. It is not proof that you are broken or that you have failed. It is life guiding you away from false maps, away from borrowed truths, toward the discovery of something deeper. Lostness is not the absence of path, but the opening to a greater path, one that cannot be charted in advance, but only walked moment by moment. You are not lost. You are the universe playing at being lost, so that it may discover itself anew. You are the wave that rises, not knowing where it will fall, the bird that soars without a fixed destination, the traveler who finds beauty only when the guidebook is forgotten. You are the dance itself, and the music, and the silence between the notes. And when you see this, when you feel it, not just as an idea, but as a lived reality, then lostness becomes something altogether different. It becomes freedom, intimacy, and trust. You no longer cling to certainty, for you see that certainty was never real. You no longer fear confusion, for you see that confusion is part of the dance. You no longer resist lostness, for you see that lostness is the doorway to being found. So let yourself be lost. Let yourself wonder, question, doubt, and stumble. For in that very wandering, life is carrying you. In that very doubt, truth is ripening. In that very stumbling, the path is appearing. And in the end, you may discover that you were never lost at all, but always exactly where you needed to be,